Everybody, this is Andre. Please give him a warm round of applause that he can't hear, but I'm sure he feels in his heart.
I feel it.
How you doing, Andre?
I'm doing well. How are you? I felt
Doing
like
well.
Teddy Riley for a minute. I was having issues getting in there, but
No,
I'm
no,
okay
it's
now.
okay. It's all right. That is okay. But thank you again so much for joining us this morning where we are in Los Angeles. You're in Dallas, so it's like noon for you. But yeah, thanks again for taking the time out to have hopefully what's going to be a meaningful and world-changing conversation.
World changing. That's heavy. All right.
Right. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
All right, so we are going to start with what was the most important lesson you learned as a young Black man growing up in America that you felt was so important to pass it to your son?
That's a really good question. I think one of the most powerful lessons I learned and am still sort of learning as we navigate through, our experience, our short time on this planet is that as a Black person in America, man, woman, child, we have to not see ourselves through the eyes of people who devalue us, right? I think that's the case with, anyone, regardless of race, but in particular, because of our unique situation in this country, and because how we've been socialized to sort of accept these anti-Black myths, it's especially important for us to not start to see ourselves through the eyes of people who hate us or who try to essentially make us inferior, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But okay, a follow-up question to that is on the flip side, like in this world of separation and division, how do you cultivate a sense of connection? Like what steps would you take to feel more connected to people who don't necessarily think like you or look like you or go through the same struggles as you do?
I think the most important thing that you can do to connect with others is to listen. And I think there are too many examples, too many opportunities for us in the world to not listen or to assume that because someone disagrees with us that they're bad people or that they are not operating in good faith. And there are some people who are only having an exchange with you in order to sort of push an agenda. But I think the overwhelming majority of people, they want to learn and understand, but they only know what they know. And I think too often a lot of us assume that they're not operating in good faith and that they're trying to diminish us when in many instances, not all, but in many, they're just trying to understand. So listening, I think, is the key. The sort of first step in connecting with others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Andre, you a few years back, you wrote a blog, which was talking about Black lives experiences, and that was back in 2005. And now, do you think with what's going on in the world, do you think it's still relevant, or like how do you see the world right now with your work and writing and stuff?
Yeah. Oh, do we lose him?
Andre, are you still there? I, um,
Oh,
I'm Andrea, we can't hear you. I think.
Yeah, I think the connection's starting to cut out just a little bit.
Yeah.
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 Kind of, a little bit.
I don't know.
Oh, is he still there? Oh, we got the spinning wheel.
We get this. Bear with us, everybody. I think technology sometimes isn't on our side, but
Yeah, I mean,
patience.
But no, that was a.
Patience is key.
Yes, but what he said, such an important thing.
It is. It is.
Especially now, people are so quick to kind of jump to their own ends and their own conclusions.
Yeah.
And while I talk, we're going to try to add Andre again. But yeah, I mean, it takes patience. It takes patience and a heart to open yourself up to listen to other people's issues. And that's kind of, I think, the biggest way. Oh, he's back. I was just talking about your previous point.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you remember the question? I don't remember the question. What was the question?
The blog and how relevant it was to things that are going on today.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I've actually revisited the blog recently and plan to sort of resurrect it in a different form. So I've taken a look at some of the things I wrote 10 and 12 years ago, and they are, unfortunately, most of what I wrote about is still relevant. So, I wrote about a sort of systemic devaluing of Black life. I wrote about how we're essentially sort of marginalized by institutions, sort of the failure of the sort of mainstream acknowledgement of inequity. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that is still, as we see, still taking place. So I remember writing quite a bit about Obama's election. Just prior to the election and afterwards. And I think a lot of what I wrote was interpreted by the folks who I spoke to who wrote it. They thought, well, maybe you're being a little cynical. But I said, my argument then and now is that it's not cynicism. It's just an acknowledgement of the work that we have to do to get to a place where the election of a Black president can be something that is truly sort of meaningful, and the sort of momentum from that can be sustained, right? Because if that doesn't happen, then we sort of we get what we have now, which is as soon as he leaves office, we get a replacement that sort of goes in the opposite direction of progress. So I think it's important for us to, while we celebrate, the accomplishments of African Americans, that we also acknowledge that there's a lot of work to do. And I think that's one of the things that I was trying to one of the points that I was trying to make in the blog.
In the blog.
Yeah. That's important. Because, I mean, thinking about activism and how individuals can use their talent in whatever way, that's incredibly important for people to realize, because, and we had talked previously off camera about how marching in the streets is one form of activism,
right?
But writing or podcasting or going on Instagram Live and talking about it to an audience is also another way of showing activism, of trying to progress.
Exactly. Completely agree. And that's one of the things that, we talked about, like you said, off camera, also was the sort of need to, as the dean sort of mentioned, connection, the need to connect to others, successfully sort of connecting to others and helping them and developing them is also a form of activism. You know, all activism isn't public agitation. You know, it takes many forms, and I think the purpose of activism is to connect us, to do more to connect us to each other and to our own humanity.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely. What is yeah, absolutely. It's really important to connect with one another. My next question will be, what is important for us or for you to cultivate in this moment right now to be able to make change in the world, and especially for you? What is it important for you to cultivate within yourself and in the society?
That's a great question. I think that for me, as I sort of, you know, look at like the current political landscape, a socio-political landscape, and see what's happening, you know, with regard to the upcoming election and how people are interpreting this current administration, and how, you know, people are, there's this sort of widespread anxiety about what's going on with COVID-19. And many of us, those of us who have the privilege of doing so, are able to sort of work from home, but still with anxiety about what's happening and, you know, economically. I think the most important thing that we can realize right now is that this is a temporary set of circumstances. That, you know, we've been here before. You know, we have had remarkable sort of economic pressure. You know, we've managed to make it through that. You know, we've always, you know, African Americans, we've always dealt with sort of, you know, the need to do less with more. So I think it's important for all of us, and especially for me, I have to keep reminding myself, this too will pass. And we're going to make it out of it, and we're going to emerge sort of stronger and, you know, more resourceful. So that's the important part for me.
Yeah. The other day on the podcast, we mentioned something about backlash, and I think it's something we don't think about a lot when change is happening, to expecting that there will be different outcome, and just
Right.
expecting both sides of outcome. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it was so inspiring to me, and I would love for the...
Sure. Yeah. I was originally, I don't think we discussed this part, but I was sort of originally kind of introduced to the idea of backlash by a writer named Susan Faludi. She wrote a feminist book, I think it was like in the early 90s, called Backlash, The Undeclared War Against American Women. And in that book, she sort of, you know, describes how after every real or perceived sort of, you know, progression for women, there's always a push. It is an inevitable push. And so I've noticed that that's also the case with African Americans. Every time that there's a real or perceived sort of a, you know, a momentum sort of milestone reached, there's always going to be a backlash. So recently we've seen this with the Obama election. You know, many sort of hailed his election as, you know, the beginning of a new time, sort of a post-racial society. And then we see what happened after that. Historically, we've seen that happen during the period of Reconstruction that followed the Civil War. Reconstruction was a time during which African Americans achieved extraordinary gains politically, financially. You know, we occupied seats of government, became elected officials, and we were establishing basically the foundation that we could sort of build upon to become fully realized members of this society, fully realized Americans.
Right.
Unfortunately, it was only a period of about 8 years. After which we saw the rise of Ku Klux Klan. We saw Jim Crow being essentially instituted across the American South. So I think it's important for us to realize that we're in a period of backlash right now, but it won't last. We have to sort of push through it until we can kind of get clear of it. But also, we have to realize that when we are sort of collectively celebrating Black success, we need to sort of steel ourselves for the coming backlash because it's cyclical. It'll be here again.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. That's one thing that, like, at first, just thinking about it, for me, like, that can be kind of alarming, thinking about the inevitable backlash that will follow. Because if you look at it, obviously, I mean, it happens all the time, as you just stated.
Yeah.
But there's hope there, right? Like, there's hope every single cycle. There's an opportunity to, like you said, steel yourself, steel your community to the best of your ability to withstand this backlash that will come, and then keep on driving forward.
That's right.
And it's like, we had also talked about off camera, instead of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, it could be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 3 steps forward. So it's just a continual progression that I find it incredibly hopeful that we all take.
Yeah.
On that note, are you hopeful, Andre?
Very much so. Always. And I think collectively, there's always hope and joy in the spirit of sort of, like you said, hope. Like we're always going to have that. We've always had it historically. We have it presently. And you see this resilience, like we have it. So I am hopeful. Yeah. I've been encouraged by things like this, opportunities to have conversations with people who are deeply concerned about social justice. I've had so many people who are, considered allies, white people who've reached out to me to check on me, to ask me what they could do. So I am hopeful about that. I think, there's a careful sort of balance that we have to maintain between sort of hope and realism. So I am hopeful, but also sort of realistic, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
My question, I'm curious, what does vulnerability look like and feel like to you? You're a father, you're a husband, and you've also, you've experienced what you have in your past with the blog and, this, that, and the next. But what does vulnerability look like to you?
I think it takes so many different forms, Alex. Like, there's a sort of like macro and micro vulnerability. Vulnerability to me is sort of always is economic, and sort of like personal financial vulnerability, sort of fear of job loss or, impending illness. There's also.
Oh no, again.
Oh, like right midpoint. Okay.
Still here?
Yep.
Yeah.
We were like,
yeah, me back. Okay. All right. Well, not again. So yeah. I think vulnerability for me sort of takes many different forms, but honestly, the thing that concerns me the most, that I try not to give my power over to, is concern about my son and the world that he's sort of inheriting, and some of the ugliness that awaits him simply because of the color of his skin or how he's perceived by people who don't value his humanity. That concerns me most of all, and that's where I sort of feel most emotionally vulnerable. But, you know, again, we can't allow fear to dictate how we interact with the rest of the world. So I know that's something that, you know, all Black parents sort of prepare their children for the world that they're going to enter once they leave the household. But, you know, we can't let that sort of dictate how we live our lives.
That's true. That's true. And when is it important for you to walk away or to take another road in certain experiences, or what you encounter in life, or, you know, like some experience that you can't change in the moment? When is it time for you to say, okay, I'm walking away, I'm taking a different road?
I think for me, as with sort of many, but for me, the time to sort of walk away from it is when I'm sort of stepping outside of myself, and I'm thinking and acting in ways that aren't in alignment with my character. For me, when I feel as if you know, I'm going to say something ugly or do something ugly, or I sort of feel that rising within myself, I feel like I don't want to be judged by something that is probably just a behavioral outlier, right? A situational. So as soon as I feel like I'm not going to react the way I normally would, I think it's time to step away. And that's, you know, in a variety of different ways, like, you know, like on Twitter. You know, I don't. Twitter's my struggle because, you know, it's easy to argue with people, but that's sort of like managing the anger and the sort of frustration, so that you're not doing or saying something that doesn't represent you to the world the way you want to be represented. That's when you should step away. That's when I know I need to step away.
Absolutely. What do you enjoy in your work? What part in your work that you enjoy most?
With like my 9 to 5.
Yes.
I like the connection with my coworkers. I like that I can use opportunities to sort of like leverage my experience, my familiarity with corporate America to help develop other people. So I engage in a lot of sort of informal kind of mentoring. You know, I sort of give people career advice. You know, I work on their resumes. And I find a lot of the work that I do sort of within the corporate space when it comes to development really is just about getting people to realize how valuable they are. I think a lot of us devalue ourselves.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely. Especially when society hasn't been playing a big part in investing and giving the citizen confidence that they need. You know, so it's up to us who are you know, educated or have certain knowledge to give it to ourselves because it's not available. So it's a really important work that you're doing. Thank you.
It's you know, I appreciate you saying that. It's one of these things that it's for so many of us with regard to our 9 to 5. You know, we're not really engaged in the sort of meaningful, impactful work that we thought we might, you know, be engaged in when we were younger. But there are always opportunities to, you know, to sort of, you know, add value to yourself and to the people around you. And I know it's difficult because, you know, in a lot of corporate spaces we're sort of working, they're like fear-based cultures. And you can't become a fully realized version of yourself if you're working in fear. But, you know, that's one of the things I try to combat and sort of help others with while working.
Right.
Yeah. So we were thinking giving people time to send out questions they would like to ask you from the audience. But meanwhile, should we ask them for our last question?
Yeah. So what message, we have our questions right off camera, so we're like glancing down the whole time.
Okay.
What message or advice would you give young people, young Black people, or young people just trying to make
anywhere in the world?
Yeah, not obviously not just Black people, but anybody who's trying to make a significant impact or change in the world.
I think there needs to be, for all of us, each of us needs to develop our own sort of hierarchy of values. So, you know, I think what happens when we don't do that is that, you know, we can sort of be manipulated by others. We can sort of engage in things that don't really, you know, characterize us properly. I don't think enough of us do the sort of personal work to develop a hierarchy of values and a sort of moral code that, you know, provides guidance for us to, you know, navigate the world. I think that work is important, critical in order for us to, you know, really sort of know where we are, you know, when things are changing around us. So, you know, the thing that I am and have worked on, the thing that, you know, I would want my son to work on and others to work on is just sort of connecting yourself with your own set of values and ensuring that those values aren't fear-based, but are based in love.
Right.
Yeah. So last time when we spoke, you mentioned the book, and we haven't read it yet, but the analogy that was in it, I feel like it speaks to everyone, anywhere, in any position in the world. Especially if you're a manager or a CEO or even a home, you don't need to be a president to make change. But there's something you mentioned in there that if I think you will be the one saying it right than me, that I would.
Was it the Hannah Arendt?
I think so.
When I mentioned Hannah Arendt, yes.
Yes.
So Hannah Arendt, she's actually a writer. She actually sort of she is a political philosopher, political theorist, and she started producing her work at the exact time that sort of Hitler was rising to power. And I think her sort of most popular book, it's called Eichmann in Jerusalem. And it talks about Adolf Eichmann. He was a fellow who his job during the Third Reich was to decide, you know, who was going to be sent to concentration camps. He was referred to as a desk murderer, right?
Wow.
Horrible person, directly responsible for you know, for helping spur sort of millions of deaths. You know, he was the key to the Holocaust. And after World War II, he was brought on trial, and people expected for him to be a monster, right? People expected, you know, when the trial revealed what his motivations were and what he did, people expected to hear something horrific about his character. We wanted to, people want to hear that whenever someone engages in great evil. And turns out he wasn't necessarily even politically aligned to the Third Reich. He didn't have any sort of political direction whatsoever. He wasn't an ideologue. He did what he did to get a promotion. He was working for a promotion. He was just doing his job, right? And we hear that we've heard that throughout history. I was just doing my job. We hear that presently. I was just doing my job. But the reason he was able to do that job, and the reason that people are able to engage in work and activities that are anti-human is because they don't have a well-defined hierarchy of values. So in the absence of that, you can attach yourself to something that is truly evil.
Evil.
And that's why that work is so important.
Right.
Yeah, that really spoke to me, because even now in our society, there's a lot of people just are driven by what they can do to feed their families, or just their personal gain in a way, or move up in the company, and now caring much who that company is going to hurt, or what their actions their actions is going to hurt. So I feel like there are a lot of people that can learn from his story. That's why I wanted to tell that story again, so that they, the history won't repeat itself.
Yeah. And anytime any sort of structure or system exists that is not beneficial to many people, and we're working to support that system, whether we want to admit it or not, we're aligning ourselves to that and to those atrocious outcomes. And so I think it's really important for each of us to determine, the value of ourselves and the value of others, and to sort of, make sure that's something that we're always cognizant of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're about to start writing again.
Yeah,
I am.
Explanation part 2.0.
Black Explanation Part 2. Yeah, I actually just I've started writing again. I'm about to start publishing my writings online, but I'm going to pick up the Black Explanation mantle again, and I'm going to sort of press forward with it. I've been encouraged very much so by what we're seeing now, by young people who are sort of out in the streets agitating, by allies who are sort of, picking up the fight and participating and working towards social change. So that sort of engendered in me a desire to kind of get back out there and to contribute to that. So I am look for Black Explanation. It'll be back up.
Oh yes, we can't wait.
The world needs that.
Yeah, I think anyone out there who has good intentions and we all have talent and have great things we can contribute to the world. Yeah. Just do it. Do it. Don't stop, because the people doing evil don't sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And don't wait for like the perfect time to do it. There's never going to be a perfect time. Let's do it now. Yeah.
It's definitely now. And we all can do something. We can be part of something bigger than us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we will be sharing information about the nonprofit you support. We did support it. We did put it over here, and we'll put it on the email. We'll send it to people, and the link to your blog. We can't wait for people to read more of your work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
so much for giving us your time and share your wisdom with us. We learned a lot, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we learned, because we did our podcast before, but we learned a lot in the podcast. We learned even more here.
Yes.
And it's always great talking to you and just sharing knowledge, learning from one of the best. We just got to keep on pushing and moving forward with love, like you said.
Absolutely.
Move forward with love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right.
All right.
I'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon. Thank you so much for all of the people who are here.
Yeah.
Wait, somebody asked a question.
Sorry, yeah, questions just popped up here. Because we want to turn the questions over to the audience, the base range community as well. And it looks like we have Coco asking a question. Let me try to read it here. What do you think needs to happen in our community to keep the current momentum alive in order to affect real change?
Good question.
I think that's a great question. And I think that's a question a lot of people are asking. I have a friend, his name's Elger Roberson. He wrote about this concept of ally fatigue, which unfortunately is already, apparently an issue. And basically the article was about how, certain pockets of our sort of collection of allies getting tired of sort of, thinking about this all the time. It's not a fun thing to think about, social injustice.
Yeah.
So in order for us to keep the momentum going, I would say that the onus is on us, those who are actually sort of suffering, to lean on the privilege of the folks who consider themselves our allies. So, when our allies ask us what they can do, which is a question I'm sure both of you have received repeatedly. I've received it repeatedly. And my answer is, you have access to and connections with people who I don't, who may, be sort of, holding on to like racist ideas or sort of anti-human ideals. Educate them, talk to them, work on them, because I think whenever things are out of balance, what we're seeing now is that we have sort of a fringe ideal, a fringe movement that's moved to the center, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to get enough people who are in the center to sort of push that out so that, fringe ideas and sort of anti-human ideas don't become policy. And I think our allies play a significant role in helping that happen by focusing their energies on, sort of working on, the people who are in their sort of circle of family and friends. And I think that those of us who have relationships with our allies need to continue to push them to do that.
Yeah.
So
that's a great answer. That
was a great question too.
That was a great question.
That's a fantastic question.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Coco.
Yeah, great question, Coco. But I mean, that's something, like you said, that comes up even now. I mean, it all kind of jump started again after George Floyd's death, but it's consistent. Like people, they want to know how we can continue to move forward, because I mean, to a lot of people, it's just a movement, it's just a fad. But to us, to Black people or those who are affected, it's not a fad. It's not something that lasts a couple months. This is our day-to-day life.
That's right.
And so it is essential that we have people, we have allies who are walking along with us, and are just remain curious, remain hungry for that change.
Yeah, and it takes courage,
It does, exactly.
It takes courage. It takes a great year. People are listening, to be out of their comfort zone, to walk along with us, because it's not an easy journey.
It's not an easy journey.
With more support and with more love, I believe there's more love in the world than evil.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's that's a very important point. I think it's easy for people, given sort of, the things that we've seen, it's easy for people to forget that. But there's a great deal more love than there is hatred out there.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just because hate and evil, it's really loud. So
it's loud.
It's super loud that even when love is loud, people get, it's not normal.
Right.
That's when you see people marching for somebody else's life, it's shocking. But the more we do it, we will normalize loud love,
Such a good point. Because when something is loud, usually it takes center stage, right? In our sort of national discussion. And we can't allow the fringe to become the middle. So that's a very, very good point.
Right. And also, Guru Lulu also reminds us that self-care and taking time to rest, like rest your brain, rest your emotions, that's also essential, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
You have to take care of yourself.
Lulu is right about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding us that. We all need that.
Thank you for bringing into the discussion the sort of spiritual aspect as well, and the health and wellness aspect. Thank you.
Yeah, we have to take care of ourselves. Absolutely. Yeah, we read a lot here, so we were recommending people, especially in the quarantine, you have to find things that come to your mind.
That's all we have is books and Instagram Live.
Yeah.
But I think we have time for maybe one more audience question, if they want to ask a question.
If anyone has a question, you can ask.
Yeah.
or we're just gonna keep rambling.
Or you can either DM Base Range or one of our personal, try our best to
Yeah.
answer our questions.
Yeah, we would also love to thank Base Range for this platform,
Yeah.
because it's a much needed platform to be able to bring our communities together. We are stronger together, and we realize, because somebody here messaged earlier that they're in Japan and they would love to be part of it. And I was like, yes, we want the entire world to come together because we are all human. And the more we see that, the more happy and peaceful we become.
That's true. And I'll share, while we're waiting for another question, I'll share a quick story with regard to that.
Sure. Yes,
so
please.
When I was a kid, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, now known as DMV. I grew up in that area. And there are a lot of people, like we had a sort of large international kind of presence, because a lot of people who are first and second generation immigrants that have lived in that area. And in my school was a fellow from Uganda, and you could tell he didn't have a lot of money, and, he dressed very poor, and other kids would make fun of him. And I noticed, like, he never got upset about it. He never got upset about it. And so one day I was talking to him. I said, how is it that, you're not, like, you don't react to these people making fun of you? And he said, I came from a country in which there was war. People were dying all around me. For me to be in a position now where people are making fun of my sneakers is a blessing. All right. And that really that perspective impacted me.
I feel him. That I come from, I'm a genocide survivor, and my entire life was, misery. And then I get here, I am able to sleep all night without nightmares. So that was like a luxury for me. And when people were, I didn't see much of what other people could see, or what annoyed people. For me, it was just, whatever. It didn't.
Yeah,
and then they see a big smile.
It's like, so what? The car won't start. Like, what is your problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Perspective. Yeah, I was going to say, Donnie just said, perspective's everything.
It is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. So a lot of my friends are like, Dean, you're always smiling, and look what you went through in your life, and I didn't know how to respond because I didn't even know why I'm not reacting to that.
Yeah. because the focus is so squarely on love for you that you don't have time for the fear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we can end with this message, which is a beautiful message that
Don, and we're giving you a shout out here, but again, perspective is everything. And it's important, like she says, to have this beautiful space. Right? I can't really tell. The picture's small, Donnie, I'm sorry, but it's a great mistake. But it's great to have this beautiful space to talk about love and perspective and just and human race and just progression, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We will see you in the next month. In September.
Yep.
That's when we're back on Base Range Community.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Andre.
Have
a wonderful rest of the day.
You too. Take care.